So our next session is the Student Activism panel, and it features 3 campus coordinators who are in the campus coordinator program of Students for Liberty. And so that program basically trains students to be activists on their campus, spreading pro-liberty messages. But it goes beyond that. I think, as I mentioned in the beginning, the reason why I think SFL is so successful is because they really invest in their students. And we believe that empowering individuals is what actually perpetuates change. It's not simply just spreading the libertarian message just because we want everyone to be libertarians. The skills that they learn, like networking skills, leadership skills, just organizing in general, I mean, I'm still learning, clearly. These are skills that they can take away into their professional lives, and I think that if people are successful in their professional lives, that enables them to make the world a better place. I mean, it sounds so cheesy, but I don't know how else to say it. And so in the Campus Coordinator program, there's an interview process at first, and if you're accepted, there is online training about 4 weeks long online, and then we fly you out to Washington, D.C. for a more in-depth leadership skills training session and before the school year starts. And you're not just left to the wolves after that. There's people like me out there who, throughout the year check in on you, asking if you need help. And so, yeah, I highly recommend getting involved. And if it's something you want to do, go to our website, studentsforliberty.org/GC, and someone on staff will get back to you once you complete that application process. And so now I'm going to introduce the person who's going to introduce pretty meta, the student panel, Phil Johnston. I'm so grateful for Phil. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Last year I knew absolutely no one in Vancouver. I moved from Toronto and moved here for school. And Phil and I met 4 years ago at a barbecue, but I didn't really talk to him. We were just Facebook friends, and I knew he was a good person, so I just reached out and said, hey, I'm starting a Students for Liberty club, and also I need friends. And eventually, he was so instrumental in helping me start my club at SFU, and it's just turned into now we're like partners in crime, spreading liberty in Vancouver. Yeah, so thank you very much, Phil, for being here, and I'm so honored to have you moderate this panel. So take it away.
Hello, can you hear me? All right. Well, thank you for that introduction, Liz. So it's my great honor to introduce to you all our student panel today. I'll start on the left, right here. We have our first panelist is from out of town. She lives in Bellingham, Washington, and studies anthropology and theater at Western Washington University, and she's also the Students for Liberty campus coordinator there. Just met her for the first time, but I asked her earlier what are some of the topics she'd like to talk about, and she immediately rifled off like 10 different topics. So I'm really excited to hear what she has to say. Give it up for Katrina Haffner, everybody. Our next panelist he's originally from Brazil and studies computer engineering at UBC, also the campus coordinator there. I remember actually the first time I met him, it was at a Libertarian meetup, and we're discussing topics, and he showed up, and suddenly the whole room was full of his passion and enthusiasm for libertarianism. So please give it up for Rodrigo Proenca. And finally, originally from South Africa, she now lives in Vancouver studying music composition at Simon Fraser University and is campus coordinator there. And she's also president of SFU Advocacy for Men and Boys, that is also sponsored by Students for Liberty. And I just want to pimp their event happening tomorrow that Karen will be speaking at again, 6:30 SFU Harbor Center for you to attend. And she's an outspoken libertarian, critic of feminism, and I'm proud to say a colleague of mine, Theryn Meyer. All right, so we can start this jamboree. So I think this panel, to me, is kind of the heart of the conference in a way, because Young people, Students for Liberty recognize this. Young people are crucial to any movement. They're crucial to the libertarian community because they have a vision to take this movement into the future. So one of the questions I wanted to start with is, I can certainly identify with this, and sometimes people can become passive consumers of ideas that they really like. They don't necessarily become advocates, but we have 3 people here that have stepped up and really decided to make a change and spread libertarian ideas. I'd just like to pass this question on to you first. What was the moment you realized that you needed to step up and make a difference and advocate for libertarian ideas? And we can start with Katrina here.
I first became politically involved when I was in high school. I don't know what caused me to become politically involved, but I knew that I had to go out there and strive to make a difference. Back then, I considered myself to be a conservative Republican, and after I graduated high school, I realized I was becoming more and more upset with the Republican establishment, so I went out to look for something new, something that more aligned with what I believed in, and I stumbled upon libertarianism. And so for these past 5 years, I've been learning more and more about libertarianism. It's a never-ending adventure. I always learn something new. There's so many things to learn about concerning libertarian policy and philosophy. And so I just knew that this was, libertarianism is something that more and more people need because they're realizing that they don't fit the status quo. They want something that reflects what they believe in. And for a lot of people, that thing is libertarianism. And for a growing number of people, that thing will be libertarianism once they realize what good solutions it offers, and most importantly, what criticism libertarians have to offer to the establishment and other established theories and thoughts that society places upon us.
Well, I remember when I was like 7 years old, and my dad asked, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? I said, I want to be the president of Brazil. And everybody, like all my family started laughing, but my dad, he was like, no, like, you might if you work hard for it. So I think like Brazil, I'm originally from Brazil, is a really poor country, as you guys know. And I come from a relatively well-off family, but I wanted to do something about it. Like I went out on the streets, I saw so much poverty, I was like, yeah. I have to do something about it, like it's not fair. But I was a kid, I didn't understand how the world worked, so, and in Brazil you have a lot of indoctrination at school, so for a long time I was like, kind of like communist. I was like, no, you have to like take from the rich and give to those poor people in the streets. But as I started studying about economics and free markets, I realized that that wasn't like the best way to make people better off. So, I think it's something that just came naturally. I always wanted to like improve the world, and I think the data shows. As an engineering student, I really like numbers. I think the data shows free markets work. So I think being a campus coordinator is a way of making this reality true.
I started becoming politically involved in libertarianism as soon as I became a libertarian. And that was in the beginning of the year, actually. I'm a very monomaniacal kind of person, so I became really obsessed. And I would just binge listen to podcasts on libertarianism and stuff. But it was basically just a logical, it followed logically from libertarianism. If we don't want other people or government to get things done because they do it badly, who else is going to do it but the individuals? So I think it's kind of a natural step for libertarians to take matters in their own hands, simply because that's kind of what their principles tell them. So yeah, that's basically how I became politically involved. Yes.
Thank you. For my next question, I want to ask you guys about your experience as campus coordinators on university campuses. I'd love to hear what your experience has been, what the positive experience has been, and I'm particularly interested in, we've heard a bit about the climate of free speech right now, particularly on university campuses. Could you talk a bit about that as well? What is the climate of free speech like at your particular university?
I think I'm an interesting case as a campus coordinator because I had already been an activist for a number of years, including on my campus. And so when I was first told about the campus coordinator program and when I attended the CC session at the 2014 ISFLC, I was skeptical on whether or not I wanted to apply, but then decided, why not? And so I did. And even though a lot of their training is focused on people who don't have much experience, it's always good to get a reminder. And why make 10 mistakes on your own and have to learn it after 8 months of being an activist instead of other activists telling you, no, do not do it that way. You should do it this way, or it might work if you do it this way. And so the CC program kind of made me wish that I had known about it sooner. And what it has offered me as a more experienced campus activist is just the number of resources they've given me, physical, online. It's always great getting pamphlets from them that teach about libertarianism, drug policy, older webinars, and other online resources. And then what I probably enjoy most is the networking, going to all these conferences and meeting new people. Even though I'm pretty introverted, I still manage to get to meet more people and establish long-lasting relationships. Sorry, I've been sick for like 2 weeks. And so my school is pretty, I don't know if I can actually say that it's kind of an outlier because I don't know what all the other schools are like. My school, Western Washington University, is known as being pretty liberal, if not leftist. However, we actually place a good emphasis on the importance of free speech and expression. At the beginning of every school year, all the clubs have to go to a mandatory club orientation to learn about budget training, the database, and all that. And starting last year, there's been this quiz that we divided to groups and participate in. And one of the questions was, which place on campus is Red Square the only free speech zone on campus? And the answer was either true or false. Out of over 100 students, I would say that fewer than 5 people got it correct. Everybody thought that Red Square was the only free speech zone on campus. Although the club advisor told us that the entire campus is a free speech zone. So at my school, I don't think it's so much that the administration is the problem, and I'm sure there are policies that that do need to be changed. I haven't exactly found them yet, but it's the students who don't know, who are afraid of getting in trouble, and therefore kind of stuck in their own boxes, thinking that if they do a certain something, then the administration will be out to get them. And so what one of my clubs, the Western Libertarians, has been trying to do is educate people on what the First Amendment is and how it translates to college and the rest of their lives.
Well, I think a lot of people saw what happened at UBC. There was this controversy about free speech. I think I'm not really sure about the details, but I know one teacher said something, and then she was like scolded for saying that. I think this is not a problem only at UBC. I think everywhere in the Western world there is a lot of this thing of political correctness, and I think it's something has already been discussed here. But I think university has, for millennia, been the place where people are able to exchange different ideas, and I think we should really preserve this idea, fight for it, because that's where new ideas happen, that's where Google happens, that's where new movements happen. So I think this UBC controversy and things that happen in US all the time, I check my friends that study there, there's always some sort of thing. I think that should raise a red flag. Regarding my experience as a campus coordinator, I think it's been a great experience. I think it takes you, well, I started the club as a transfer student, so I didn't know anybody at UBC, but I still decided to open it anyway. And I think it really teaches you how to like start things, how to be an entrepreneur. And I think once I graduate, I want to open my own business eventually. I think it really taught me like certain skills that will be very helpful in the future, and just connecting with other amazing people, networking with them. So I really recommend it.
I've never first-hand experienced at my university with free speech being compromised, in the sense that as president of one club and secretary, I think, of the Vancouver Students for Liberty, I've never had an event shut down by the university government. So free speech has not been compromised in that kind of formal sense, but with the very kind of authoritarian, far left, I guess, air on campus, orthodoxy on campus, there's this sense of, there's this attitude of like, a lot of students have this attitude of they would be happy to see events that don't share their views be shut down. Like, it would make them happy if those people couldn't speak. And I don't really personally understand it, that, for example, I don't consider myself, for example, feminist, but I wouldn't be happy if feminists were somehow not allowed to speak on campus. That would make me happy. But I find that with students a lot. And that attitude and that general air on campus of like a moral authority and like, yeah, just that kind of air of an authority makes it so much harder to speak up and have a dissenting opinion. And that's it's not kind of institution, it's kind of an attitude that a lot of people on campus have, which makes it more complex as to how to kind of tackle that. And then there's the issue of quote-unquote safe spaces. And I feel like the word safe has been co-opted in a way that you can't disagree with it, because why would someone disagree with a space that is safe? But like, there's nothing more safe about a space in which you can only share one ideological perspective. That doesn't make it safer, but it's been painted in that way so as to guilt you into not being for it, because if you're not for it, then you're against what, violence, or like the lack of safety. So there's a lot of weirdness on my campus and on campuses in general, but yeah, that's my experience with it.
Cool. All right. For my next question, it comes from that idea that I think young minds are so important to the future of the movement. And I think I'd like to get your feedback on libertarian movement in general. So I can try and paint a picture like libertarianism is a company, or it's like say if libertarianism was on Tinder, you know, what would make you swipe left? What would make you swipe right? So my question is basically, you know, if you could just group the libertarian community into one lump, what's something that you like about what libertarians are doing, and what's something you think could be improved upon or should be done differently?
Well, when I think about the stereotypical image of libertarians, I think of the Libertarian Facebook group, which is full of people who are Islamophobic, racist, trolls of every kind, and if you don't agree with them, then you're stupid, idiotic, and not a real libertarian. And so I think getting to the core of the issue, it's that that you always need to be critical of what you believe in. I'm a feminist. I'm also critical of feminism. I'm a libertarian. I'm also critical of libertarianism. And so you need to keep an open mindset, and even though libertarians think, yes, I'm so alternative, I believe these views that the establishment don't believe in, they still have that same closed mindset because they're not willing to look at other viewpoints, examine other viewpoints. I find that most of these problems are with older libertarians. I've been finding that the millennial libertarians, like what you mostly find with Students for Liberty, are more into weighing the good and bad aspects of their views, want to debate in a good, healthy environment, not to put others down, but to learn ideas by communicating with people they don't necessarily agree with. So I think it's good to keep in mind that you do not know all the answers, even though sometimes you may think you do, and to keep an open mind and place yourself in situations where you may be uncomfortable so that you can learn from them. In a theater class this quarter, our professor was talking to us about trigger warnings and the idea of like whether it's censoring speech or providing an aid for those who need it. And she reminded us that supposedly it's a pretty common adage in the education system, is that people learn in uncomfortable spaces. And so we need to keep that in mind and not confine ourselves to an echo chamber.
I think libertarianism, the positive aspect is that there are a lot of really good think tanks that support what we say. So I think a lot of the things, when the left is trying to convince people about their ideas, they try to appeal to emotions. And we libertarians, we have a lot of data, we have a lot of statistics, a lot of great books that can support what we are saying, a lot of great resources. I think we also have a lot of very good people that are engaged in the movement, very entrepreneurs. So I think one libertarian is very productive compared to, I don't know, like a communist or some sort of thing. The bad things, I think I agree with Katrina. I think one thing I see a lot here in Brazil, in US, and I think it's something we have to learn with the communists, is that infighting doesn't work to spread ideas. I think if you try to make everybody agree with every single issue with you, nobody's gonna, like the ideas of liberty, the underlying ideas we all agree, are not gonna be implemented, are not gonna go forward. So I think libertarians sometimes have to compromise a little bit their ideas in order to implement the most fundamental things. And I think it's really hard. The communists couldn't do it because, like, we had Lenin and Mao and Stalin. Each one had their own philosophy. They started fighting. Of course, it didn't work because the philosophy was really bad. but one of the reasons why I think it didn't last as much was because there was a lot of infighting if they tried to compromise. The second thing is that it's something, I'm seeing a lot in Brazil. I'm really happy it's going on right now. I don't see as much in Canada, but I see that it can improve in the future, is that the ideas are very good, but we need more people selling it. And when I say selling the ideas, I'm not only saying the students, but also the mainstream media. I see a lot of journalists, very famous journalists in Brazil, saying that they are blatant libertarians, they're like 100% libertarians. And I think that raises a lot of awareness about those ideas. So I think now it's the time for us to spread. The ideas are good, but we need people to spread. So I think it's something it's lacking right now, but Students for Liberty and a lot of other organizations are making it happen.
So I guess one good thing that I've experienced from libertarianism is, especially like social issues, how libertarians tackle social issues is in much contrast with how I experience people tackling social issues on campus. And their political leanings are usually kind of authoritarian, far-left, progressive. I don't want to trash any people who do identify as that, but like authoritarian kind of attitudes. There's this idea of like, I am right, and if you don't agree with me, you are misogynist, racist, whatever. Even if you made a reasonable point, or if you argued rationally. But what I find with, let's say, libertarian feminists like Katrina, or any of the other libertarian feminists that is of ours, there's at least the attitude of like, I might be wrong, you know? The possibility of me being wrong and you being right is there. I don't find that with, that's not my experience at university. The possibility of them being wrong is not one, it's non-existent. Bad thing, I think there are a lot of libertarians, and this also grows. I can say the same thing about people in women's rights for women. There are a lot of people who just sit behind the laptop and complain about stuff. And complain about advocacy work that other people are doing, and they think we're doing it wrong. So that's frustrating. Yeah.
Great, so we've got about 15 minutes left, and I wanted to make time for each of you to talk about a particular issue or topic that's close to your heart related to libertarianism. I think let's start with Rodrigo. You wanted to say a few words about public education for Johnston, right?
Yeah, so like, I've always been very connected with education. I think one of the things I've seen that makes countries like develop really fast is having a good educational system. You can see Singapore, Hong Kong, they have the best educational systems in the world. And before I came here to Canada, me and 3 other friends that were pretty libertarian, we founded an NGO that prepped low-income students in Brazil to get into the top universities. We have like 100 students right now, so it's really cool. It's one of my big accomplishments. But the thing I realized is how we really wanted to help the students, but how bad their education was. Like, it's really, when you think that it's like bad, it can be worse. It can be worse. And just last week, I was reading the news in Brazil, and they did a poll of adults in Brazil about their math skills. 75% of Brazilian adults don't understand the concept of fractions. And almost all of them go to public schools in Brazil. So you spend 12 years learning math, and you don't know what fraction is. So that really shows me the government doesn't work very well, especially in education. And I got some other data to show how bad governments are at educating a population. So, for example, half of children in South Asia cannot read after 4 years of schooling. 1/3 in Africa can't read after 4 years of schooling. And here in Canada, the education is, if you see the international rankings, the education is good. It's one of the best Western countries in terms of education. But it's at the same level as Vietnam, a country that is 20 times poorer than Canada. So Canada is pretty good in education, but at what cost? So couldn't it be more efficient? So what I wanted to talk about education is what I think the government does wrong and how I think we could solve really fast. So the first thing is like, I see in Brazil is regulation. So people don't even understand fractions, and they have to learn 13 different subjects, including ancient Portuguese literature. So why would you learn that if you cannot read properly? But you have to, because the government says you have to. So the first thing I think the government does is being very strict on what people say. What if you taught them basic math and then taught them programming? I think that would help them much more than ancient Portuguese literature, taking them out of poverty. I think indoctrination also, I think in Brazil, I remember when I was learning about China and Cuba, they always mention Che Guevara and Stalin as revolutionaries, as people that had different ideas and just, it didn't work out. But the thing is they were like mass murderers, and they don't label them as mass murderers, but that's what they were. They were worse than Hitler. Mao killed, I think, like 30 million people. It's like crazy. And I've actually came across that number because I was reading my textbook and he seemed so revolutionary. And then I was like, oh no, he killed 30 million people, you know. So I had to do my own independent research to come to that information. But how many millions of Brazilians still think the guy is really cool, you know? So, and I think public education is really strict. Like, I think it's really slow to change. We live in the 21st century, and I think this idea of just getting people about the same age group in a classroom is not efficient anymore. So I think there are a lot of different things going on right now. I'm really passionate about, but I don't have time. But I think the internet is changing things like Duolingo that takes foreign languages, Code Academy that takes you programming, Khan Academy. In Africa, there are private schools that are $1. And the research shows they're better than public schools. It's not, you're not gonna get like an Ivy League education, but for them it's better than what the government offers. So I think, yeah, I think libertarians should focus a lot in education, since I think letting the market do the job is a better way than just the government.
Well said. I'd like to go to Theryn next. Would you like to talk about Yes If You Advocacy for Men and Voice Club? Maybe why you started that?
Do you want to ask me a question about it? Where should I start?
Wherever you
Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences more in my closing remarks at the end. But, so, I noticed a lot of like anti-male bias on the campus at SFU. While I was kind of involved in like social justice-y kind of stuff. And I never realized that in order to have a better condition, be a better condition for you know, trans people or women or whatever, that you have to, for some reason, be biased and kind of lacking compassion for men. I didn't realize that was one of the criteria. So that was really weird for me. And then I made a couple of enemies on campus, and then I distanced myself became monomaniacal and became a libertarian and a men's rights activist. And then I contacted Liz because I needed help from some campus, and I thought the Libertarian, some club, and I thought the Libertarian club on campus would probably be supportive. So, like with her help and with Phil's help, we started the SPU Advocacy for Many Boys, and our first talk was on missing and murdered Indigenous men. That was in October? Early October, and that was really great. And then the second one was on Men's Issues 101 that also went well. And as we mentioned, our next one is tomorrow. We decided to be a little bit more controversial, and there might even be a protest. It's on toxic masculinity and toxic femininity. Karen will be talking about toxic gender behavior, and I'm so excited to hear how that's pan out. But yeah, and issues that the SFUA plans on bringing up and raising awareness about is stuff like circumcision, the high rates of male suicide, all of that kind of like the stop men's issues kind of stuff that you decide when you're working on. And yeah, there's a donation jar outside. I think that's it. I'm going to talk a little bit more in my closing remarks. So if it's something I apologize.
Actually, I'd like to hear from you, Katrina, next. You mentioned a number of subjects. Really anything you want to talk about. I thought it was interesting you mentioned wanting to maybe say something about reaching out to groups that might be perceived as rivals and how you might go about doing that in terms of teaming up with them as the students working group. But share your thoughts on whatever topic you like.
Sure. Well, this is actually a topic I address a lot because when I come to conferences like these, there are some panelists or some members of the audience who say, "Oh, those people on the left, they try to ruin everything." And actually next week in Portland, next Saturday, I'll be having a conference there, so you're free. And there are some people in the area who are absolutely convinced that leftists are going to take over the event and just, I really don't know. Yeah, and I really don't think that will happen. For one, if they do know about it, they probably don't care. But then to the people I have been reaching out to, because we have talks on criminal justice reform and the criminalization of sex work, I've been reaching out to people about those topics, and the people who are part of those organizations probably lean at least a little bit to the left. So you just find topics that both your groups care about. For example, drug policy is a huge topic for me, and you'll find that there are a number of left organizations who like to focus on those topics as well. And then, let's say you can't find a topic, or, I mean, I'm pretty sure you can find a topic, but if you want to switch things up a little bit and concentrate on a topic that you and another group may disagree on, then you can hold a friendly debate. A couple of years ago, the Western Libertarians hosted a debate on gun control. And so we had a man from the Whatcom Libertarians who is very much an advocate for open carry, come to the school to debate the president of the Whatcom Democrats. And it was kind of funny. The school thought that there might, I don't know, they probably thought something may go very wrong with the event, so they sent security, or they said they would send security. They ended up not doing that. But it was a very friendly debate. It looks like the audience enjoyed it, and both the debaters enjoyed it very much. And so if you have a debate, which I highly encourage you to do, so that you're allowing the audience to make decisions for themselves rather than just having a speaker speak at them. If you have a debate, just realize that it doesn't have to be one versus the other. Of course, that's the format of a debate, but it doesn't have to be the mindset of what the debate is about. Remember that having debates is all about letting people open their mind. I've been talking about this pretty much the whole time being up here, but letting people decide things for themselves, not having to throw answers at them. And so, yeah, just I think having debates and finding issues that the different organizations agree on are two different ways to reach out to others, and also remembering that to not other people, which means it's us versus them. We're all human, so I really doubt that people from other groups like to be categorized as the other.
Nice. Well, it's been awesome hearing your ideas. We are actually out of time, ladies and gentlemen. Please give it up for Katrina, Rodrigo,